There's a chemical in your brain that's pretty much running the show, controlling way more of your life than you probably even realize. And yeah, we're talking about dopamine.
Have you ever found yourself just mindlessly scrolling through your phone? You know you should stop, you have other things to do, but you just can't. Well, that little compulsion, that itch you can't seem to scratch, that's not a personal failure of willpower. It's actually a massive clue into one of the most powerful systems in your brain, and it all comes back to that one molecule, dopamine.
Okay, so you've probably heard dopamine called the pleasure molecule, right? That's pretty much the biggest misconception out there. So let's just bust that myth wide open right now.
Here's the most important thing to get. Dopamine isn't the reward. It's not the feeling of pleasure. It's the chemical that screams, go get that thing. It's the engine of desire, the force that pushes you to seek out whatever your brain thinks is important for survival, whether that's food, a connection with another person, or yeah, that next little notification on your screen.
This is going to sound kind of crazy, but a famous experiment really shows this in action. Scientists took rats and basically turned off their dopamine systems. Now, if you put food right in their mouths, they'd still eat it and seem to enjoy it. But if the food was just a few inches away, they wouldn't move. They would literally starve to death. Without dopamine, the motivation, the get up and go, was just gone.
So if it's all about motivation, how does this system actually work inside our heads? Well, the absolute best way to picture it is as a set of scales, a delicate pleasure-pain balance deep inside your brain.
See, your brain is obsessed with one thing more than anything else: balance. Neuroscientists call it homeostasis. It is constantly working 24/7 to keep that internal pleasure-pain scale perfectly level. This is its #1 job.
So let's say you eat a piece of amazing chocolate cake, or you get a bunch of likes on a post, or you watch a hilarious video. Boom, that's a hit of pleasure, and it tips the scale down on one side. Simple enough, right? But your brain immediately, and I mean immediately, goes to work to level things back out.
So how does it do that? Dr. Anna Lembke, a brilliant psychiatrist at Stanford, has this great analogy. Imagine little gremlins hopping on the pain side of the scale to balance it out. This is your brain's adaptive response. It's turning down the volume on your dopamine receptors to bring that scale back to neutral. But here's the kicker, and this is the most important part of the whole system. Those gremlins, they're clumsy. They don't just level the scale, they overdo it. They press down so hard that they tip it an equal amount into the side of pain. That brief dip, that's the hangover after a fun night. That's the empty feeling when your favorite show ends. And that's that nagging urge to scroll for just one more video. It's a deficit state designed to make you seek more pleasure.
Now, for most of human history, in a world where pleasure was rare and hard-won, this system worked perfectly. But in our modern world, let's just say it is completely, totally overloaded.
Our brains are basically running on ancient software. They evolved in a world of scarcity, where we had to work really hard for a tiny little bit of pleasure. But today, we've dropped that ancient brain into a world of overwhelming, endless, easy pleasure. From junk food to social media, we are surrounded by high dopamine hits our wiring was never, ever designed to handle. And the consequence of this constant overload is, well, it's devastating. By constantly hammering the pleasure side, those gremlins eventually just give up and set up camp on the pain side. And what that does is it drags your entire baseline level of happiness way, way down. You end up in what's called a chronic dopamine deficit state.
And this, right here, is the absolute essence of addiction. Your brain has adapted so much that you're no longer seeking something to feel good. You're just desperately trying to get back to zero, to escape the pain of that tilted scale, just to feel normal again. The pleasure is long gone. Only the chase remains.
And when you're stuck in that deficit state, you experience these universal symptoms of withdrawal. It doesn't matter what your drug is. It could be cocaine, it could be video games, it could be sugar. The underlying feelings are the same: that constant anxiety, the irritability, the sleepless nights, and that relentless gnawing craving.
And don't for a second think this is just about some hardcore illicit substance. Dr. Lembke, the Stanford psychiatrist who pioneered so much of this research, she tells a story of how she herself got addicted to romance novels. She was staying up all night reading, hiding it from her family, being less present in her own life. It's a classic addiction story, just for the different drug of choice.
Okay, so that's the problem. Our pleasure-pain balance is totally out of whack. But here's the good news. We can fix it. So how do we get that scale level again? How do we restore homeostasis?
One of the most powerful tools we have is something called a dopamine fast. The idea is pretty simple. You pick a behavior that's causing you problems, and you abstain from it completely for 30 days. Now, fair warning, the first week or two will probably feel terrible. That's withdrawal. But if you push through, you give your brain a much-needed break, you allow those gremlins to finally hop off the pain side, and your baseline can start to reset to a much healthier level.
But there's an even more powerful and kinda counterintuitive strategy. Instead of always chasing pleasure, what if you intentionally sought out discomfort? It turns out that pressing on the pain side of the scale is actually a much healthier, more sustainable way to get dopamine.
Just think about the difference between easy dopamine and hard-earned dopamine. Easy dopamine, from social media, junk food, whatever, it gives you a really quick spike, but it's always followed by that painful crash below baseline. But hard-earned dopamine, from things like intense exercise, a cold shower, or finishing a really difficult task, that gives you a slower, more sustained rise in dopamine that can last for hours. And here's the best part, there's no crash.
So what's happening here is that when we engage in things that are effortful or challenging, we're essentially paying for our dopamine up front. We endure the discomfort first, and the reward is a lasting sense of well-being that doesn't put us into chemical debt with our own brain.
Which leaves all of us with a really critical question. In a world that is practically designed to offer us endless, effortless pleasure at our fingertips, the most rewarding path might actually be the one that requires a little bit of pain. So, are the things you're chasing every day truly bringing you lasting satisfaction, or are they just keeping you stuck on that dopamine treadmill?